sharing the land acknowledgement statement. We would like to begin by respectively acknowledging that Dufferin County resides within the traditional territory and ancestral lands of the Shnantati Payton, Adawandron Neutral, Haudenosaunee Six Nations, Anishinaabe peoples. We also acknowledge that various municipalities within the County of Dufferin reside within the treaty lands named under the Haldeman Deed of 1784 and two of the Williams Treaties of 1818. Treaty 18, the Nottawasaga Purchase, and Treaty 19, the Adjutant's Treaty. These traditional treaties upon which we live and learn are steeped in rich Indigenous history and traditions. It is with this statement that we declare to honor and respect the past and present connection of Indigenous peoples with this land, its waterways, and resources. And with that, it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to tonight's chair, a true community champion, Claire Knight. Over to you, Claire.
Thank you very much, Carissa. Nice to meet you all today, and thank you for joining us. I believe that I'm going to introduce Sarah tonight, which I'm honored to do so. And then hopefully we'll have an opportunity to talk a little bit about some other initiatives within the community. And we'll go from there. So without further ado, I am honored to introduce our special guest, mental health expert and business owner, Sarah Ahmed. Sarah is a registered psychotherapist and co-founder of Wellness Psychotherapy Services. She completed her undergraduate degree in psychology and a master's in social work from the University of Toronto, and she specialized in mental health and addictions. Over the past 10 years, she has worked as a mental health and addictions therapist at the Center for Addiction and Mental Health, and is currently a mental health therapist at the University of Toronto. Sarah strongly favors an integrative, trauma-informed approach and has extensive experience providing individual and group counseling to those experiencing mental health concerns, such as anxiety, depression, and sustaining healthy relationships and managing life stressors. Hello, Sarah, and thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Claire. 10 years, I don't think I could ever get used to an introduction like that, so I appreciate that. I still find myself getting extremely uncomfortable and also blushing, so thank you. That was so generous and kind of you. And thank you, Brittany, and thank you, Carissa, as well, for putting this together and bringing us all together. And I'm very, very happy to be here. And that being said, we can jump right into it. I did create a short presentation to talk about a couple of real life things that are coming up that we have seen over the last 14 years. Fingers crossed we have no technical issues, but safe to say that we've been doing this for 14 months. I don't know if I just said 14 years, 14 months. And I think safe to say every single time I've done a presentation, something has come up. So if it does come up, bear with me, please, we'll figure it out. And I thank you for your patience in advance. So we'll jump right into it. This is very informal, and we have a couple of polls that are in there as well, and Brittany is going to help me with that. So thank you again for that, Brittany. We'd like to be a little bit more collaborative, so we'd like to hear your thoughts. If you have any questions, we could bring it up in the middle of it, or we could save it to the end. Like Carissa mentioned, it is going to be a bit more of an informal approach, and that's generally my approach towards things. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we can jump right into it. Okay, let's get the show going. Here we go. Okay, wonderful. All right, I'm just gonna quickly just check. Brittany, does everything look okay on your end? You're muted. Thumbs up.
Whoops. It looks good. It looks like there's a little extra space on your right side, though it's not completely full screen.
Gotcha.
There we go. Beautiful.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. Okay. Showtime. Let's roll. All right. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about stress, survival, showing up, and what this actually means. Of course, one more time, I say unprecedented. I feel like someone's ears are going to fall off, if not mine are. So I'll try not to use that word, but we'll try to, navigate some of the issues that we're all facing, and we have been. I know just from what I've been seeing over the last couple of weeks, I think this time wave 3 has been very difficult because it just feels like what's going on. You know, the Hunger Games with the vaccination rollout, it is very, very challenging. So what I can say is, can we thrive in this? I don't know about that, but what I can tell you is we can figure out a couple of ways to, you know, just keep our head a little bit above water just to survive. And it's a pandemic, and I think safe to say is there's not a lot of people who are thriving in a pandemic. So let's keep our expectations very realistic and learn a little bit about what happens to us as we go through this challenging time. Now, the first thing I wanted to do is kind of geek out a little bit and figure out, you know, what happens to our brain and our body. And I wanted to go over some things. So, oh, let me just minimize that. I'm distracted by my own video. I don't think I'm going to get used to seeing myself as well on camera. So here, I'm just going to minimize that. There we go. Okay. So one of the things, or a couple of things happen to us in our brain and our body when we're experiencing stress. So the first thing that happens to us is we start to produce cortisol, which is the stress hormone that we have within our body. Now, in moderation, cortisol is absolutely okay. It's a very normal process. And during stressful or heightened stressful events, this gets much, much, much heightened or triggered. And that's where it becomes a little bit problematic. Now, growing up, my mom always said everything in moderation is okay. So, you know, that's fine. Just make sure you don't go too black or white with things. Try to stay in the gray zone. Same thing when it comes to these hormones within our body. Now, high levels of cortisol can impact your brain and your body's ability to function appropriately. And one of the things that also happens is stress shrinks this part of our brain, which is the prefrontal cortex. And that's where a lot of like rationale and reasoning comes in. Another thing also is the prefrontal cortex, just to give you some perspective, it fully develops at the age of 25. And that's why I know when I was a teenager, I didn't make the smartest decisions. And I think many of us can relate to that because this part is missing. So it doesn't help us. Well, it's not, but it's still not fully developed. So it doesn't help us rationalize certain things to be like, it's probably not a good idea. Don't do that. And so that's why teenagers kind of end up finding themselves in sticky situations. So what happens is when we find ourselves very stressed out, we almost start to become teenagers in our behaviors as well. This starts to shrink. And then the other thing that happens is our amygdala, that's also a part of our brain, it actually expands, which means that we start becoming more heightened and hypersensitive to stress, and we start picking up more stressful things in our environment. So you might notice, for instance, like, you know, if you might be having a very busy day and you're just using a pen to just write some receipts or make some notes and the pen runs out of ink, you might find yourself extra irritable because of that. That's why, because your amygdala is expanded. And even the smallest things, such as your pen running out of ink and you having to go grab another pen, which can be not that big a deal on a day-to-day basis, that day actually feels like a big deal. And that's the reason. So how does this show up in our bodies? Oh, there we go. Okay, so it can impact our memory. And one thing that comes up often, and we've been seeing that a lot with students in university, also individuals ranging from the age of about 25 to 39 or 40, is that they feel as though they might have a diagnosis of ADHD. But when we actually look deeper, it's not just that. What happens is when we're very stressed out or feeling very anxious, our memory gets impaired. And we're unable to concentrate, we're unable to remember, we're unable to focus. And that's why an ADHD diagnosis also ends up being very complicated. So in times of stress, memory gets impacted, our learning gets impacted because we're unable to retain information. And that's why we always say, before you're going into something, don't cram the information in. You're probably not going to retain it because your body's so stressed out and your nervous system's on fire and you're very bound up. Another thing that happens is our brain cells are constantly developing, and that gets stunted because when the cortisol level starts building up, the growth of new brain cells stops because right now all we need to do is focus on the stressor. We also know that our brain has the gray matters and the white matters. So what happens is the gray matter, which is responsible for problem solving and decision making, it starts to shrink in times of heightened stress and also chronic stress for a prolonged period of time. And of course, the last one, or one of the main ones actually, is it impacts our mental health. And the two most commonly reported concerns are anxiety and depression, which is actually the two most commonly reported concerns in the world. And of course, stress is directly linked to that. The more heightened the stress levels are, the higher the risk of getting diagnosed with anxiety and depression and symptoms that come with that. Now, not all stress is bad for us because there's certain stress that stimulates us and stimulates our growth. And that means that it helps our brain wire in different ways. So for example, when a year ago, when I was asked to do workshops, we actually had a bunch of in-person workshops and all of them transitioned to virtual. I actually have never done virtual work. So it was quite a bit of a learning curve for me because my work is always in person with clients. So it was quite stressful for me. And that also meant that it was a healthy stress in the sense that I actually started to coach myself and I would talk to a camera. I would record myself and just talk to a camera just so I could get used to it. It was very uncomfortable doing it at first. Still a little bit uncomfortable. I don't think I'm 100% there. Significantly different from where I was last year, this time when I was doing online workshops. So what that means is my brain actually just stretched out and rewired how I operate because it's quite easy for me. I've been, for 10 years, I've actually been working a crowd in person, and that's very, very easy. Virtual, even though I could be in my pajamas in my most comfortable clothing, it's still not as comfortable as it would be in person. And that means that that stress was healthy enough for me to rewire myself and to adapt my body to that. And another example of this is stress before an interview or an exam. It helps us prepare for the interview to perform better. Because if we didn't have that, we probably wouldn't be able to retain that information to perform well. So just a small tidbit over there for you to remember. Now, let's do a quick poll. Brittany, I think will help with this. Oh, wow, super fast. I'd love to hear all of your thoughts on where do you think stress shows up in our bodies? Take a moment to think about, anytime you've been feeling stress, where does it show up? Okay.
Just watching the answers roll in.
Yeah.
I'll let you know when we come to the end of all attendees.
Sounds wonderful.
I think for me, Sarah, it's always my shoulders and my neck.
Yeah. One of the things I learned about myself, which I actually had no idea, is for me, stress shows up in my hips. There's so much tightness in my hips that I get up and I was like, did somebody just punch me in my hip? Today, what is going on here? There's so much tightness that shows up there. And I never knew that about myself. I thought I was like, yeah, shoulders, chest, the usual.
Yeah.
10 years later doing this, and I was like, wow, this is actually what's going on in my body.
I've never heard hips before. That's
yeah. And you know what's interesting? I actually talked about that on social media, on Instagram, and I had so many people message and they said, oh my gosh, me too. I thought I had issues with my pelvic muscles, but it's, yeah.
Okay, I think we can end the polling.
All righty. Okay.
I'll just share the results here.
Yes, please do. Okay, so sleep issues seems to be the winner, and then the runner-up seems to be jaw clenching. And okay, so top 3 is sleep issues, jaw clenching, and body pains. All righty. Okay. Thank you for that. Can I go ahead and close that, Brittany? Okay, I'm going to take the silence as a yes.
You should be good to go. Thanks.
Okay, awesome. Not a problem. Okay, thank you everybody for sharing that. So it was a little bit of a trick question. All of the above is true, and I know you couldn't pick all of the above, so kind of set that one up to work for me. Sorry about that. And so what's very interesting is that despite us experiencing all of those symptoms, it's interesting to see how a good chunk of people picked one that shows up. So sleep issues, insomnia, or the opposite, sleeping too much. So sleeping too little or sleeping too much is very, very, very common. So is muscle tension. I'm actually, to be honest, I'm actually quite surprised sleep issues kind of made it to the top of that list, because the most common answer that most people give is chest tightness. And they're like, oh, I just feel it here. It just feels like something's like, collapsing in there. And I don't know what's going on. And then it's like my heart kind of sinks into my stomach. Just, it's so overwhelming right over here on the upper half of the body. And so that's the one that comes up most often. But it's very interesting, like I said, to see that sleep issues is the one that came up over here in this crowd. Like I said, truth be told, they all show up. So headaches, body pains, tense muscles. So I'm going to jump a little bit into the self-care piece now. One of the things I highly recommend for people to do is just be mindful of when you notice any kind of tension, when you're just, you could take your 2 fingers and just massage yourself right over here this way, go to your temples. Now here's the trick. Your temples and your jaw right over here, they're always in sync. They're always talking and behind the scenes. So whenever you go ahead and you go this way onto the temples, I highly recommend go down to the jaw and massage yourself. You'll notice there's so much tension. And I think jaw tightness as well is something that a lot of people chose. There's so much tension over here. You'll notice a huge release, and that's really, really nice. If you find that, you know, you need feel free to put some hand cream, a little bit of oil just to massage that out a little bit. It actually makes a big change in your day because we use our face muscles so much, talking, laughing. When we're stressed out, everything kind of, you know, jams up in one area. And we don't realize how many baby muscles we have all over our face that we're not really using so much. And so use what God's given you. Use your 2 fingers, 3 fingers, full hand. I usually pretty much go with the top 2, and I kind of just go around the natural creases and the curves of my face. And depending on your bone structure, that would change from person to person. So that's one of the best ways to manage that. I will go into details about self-care, but just a little bit of a tidbit there for you. Emotional eating, this is something that's come up a lot over the past year because when we are at home and we're bored, boredom is a trigger for many of us. We don't know what to do. So either we lose our appetite when we're stressed out, or we just want to stress eat, which that doesn't really help because when we're stress eating, most of that food is very likely processed food. We never stress eat a salad, right? And so most likely processed food, which then translates into sugars in the body. Sugar has a very direct connection to anxiety. And so whenever you consume more sugar, just assume that your anxiety levels are going to shoot up. In that moment in time, it might drop just for a quick minute, but then it will go back up. And that's why we keep going for the 4th cookie and the 5th cookie and the 6th cookie, because one cookie just doesn't fix that issue over there. Sleep issues, that was the winner in that previous poll. Sleeping too much, sleeping too little. I can talk a little bit about sleep hygiene. I'll actually talk about it now because I don't think I've mentioned that in the other slides. I didn't think that was going to be the number 1. So with sleep issues, something that is very important is to develop a sleep hygiene. What does sleep hygiene look like? It's actually preparing your body to go into a state of rest after X period of time. So for instance, let's say got a very busy work day and you kind of wrap up everything around, let's just say 8 p.m. Okay, you can have dinner, hang out with your loved ones, your families, and then you wind down for the evening. For most of us now, it's just the days, the evenings, everything kind of just blended in right now in the pandemic. So I would highly recommend to keep it structured. And what that looks like is at 8 p.m. or 9 p.m., you just say, okay, this is going to go away. My phone, for instance, I do check it even after hours, but my phone goes on silent automatically. And I've set that up on purpose because I just don't want constant notifications. And I have a couple of people in my favorites list. I messaged my sister before the presentation. I was like, don't call, don't text, don't nothing. It's not till 8 o'clock because I was like, the phone keeps buzzing and I don't want that. And so that's one of the things I also do as well, because in my mind, if it's important, my phone's going to buzz even if it's on silent. And that's one of the things you can do to prepare your body. Another thing I highly recommend is just to take a very hot shower, because when you're stressed out and you're just moving day to day, your muscles actually tense up. When your muscles tense up, you can't sleep. The reason why you can't sleep is because from an evolutionary standpoint, what happens is if the caveman went to sleep, regardless of being stressed or not, what would happen is anytime there was a threat in the system, let's just assume there's a lion there, the lion would come attack the caveman, and we would no longer survive, or the species would no longer survive. And that's why there's an evolutionary standpoint viewpoint to why we can't sleep when we're stressed. When we're stressed, we need to fix the issue at hand, because if we don't, it feels like it's an attack or a threat to our nervous system, and it will impact our chances of survival. Now, the human species has not evolved enough to know the difference between an attack from something that's very, very actual detrimental to our physical safety and health versus, got some crappy news, or my boss sent me an email saying, hey, I want to talk to you tomorrow. So it still feels very heavy and stressful. And that's the main reason why we can't sleep when we're stressed, because the cortisol levels start producing, the body starts producing increased cortisol levels. And what that means is the melatonin production levels start to drop. And when the cortisol stress levels are high, the melatonin production is dropped. You just can't sleep. That's not how it works. So to be able to sleep when you're stressed out, you have to go take a hot shower or a cold shower just to relax and ease the body. And I highly recommend engaging in very low intensity yoga movements, because you're just stretching and relaxing the body. Once the body starts to feel relaxed, that stress hormone that I talk about, cortisol, it's going to start coming down. When that starts coming down, your melatonin production levels start going up. And that's when you can actually sleep. Now, fun fact, from our cell phones and also screens, we always talk about blue light. Blue light's not good. Blue light production is very natural, and it's in the daytime. And that's why when you're in daylight, we don't feel sleepy, because blue light inhibits the production of melatonin in the body. So when blue light comes in, melatonin production levels stay low. When stress hormone comes in, melatonin production levels stay low. So that's why at nighttime we want to push away the blue light. We want to push away, the things that are stressing us out. We're not like ignoring them, but we're just saying we're going to shelf it, because right now I can't really do anything about it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to engage in grounding strategies right now. And that looks like taking that shower, doing some stretches, going for a run. If you're going for a run, don't go for a run too close to bedtime, because your body's very riled up from the feel-good hormones that keep pushing through or the runner's high, as we call it. So you probably want to go for a run around like 8:39, and then wind down again, because your body is in a very heightened state of energy. You want to bring it down, and that's how you develop that sleep hygiene. It's not easy to do. However, it is something that does require a little bit of time, because remember, this is a skill. Anytime you're trying to practice a skill, whether it's woodwork, whether it is, trying to do some artwork, whether it is developing sleep hygiene, they all take time, because it's a skill that doesn't come, or it's not taught to us since we're younger. Now, moving to the next thing, we also often hear that, when I'm very stressed out, I fall sick, because what happens is your immune system gets compromised, because when we have that stressor in the environment or in our minds, we need to fix it right away. Nothing else matters. And there's also an evolutionary reason for that as well, which is the way the body works is, if I am dead, my immune system doesn't matter. So I actually need to channel and reshift all my resources into fixing the stressor. And that's why your immune system, your digestive system, your sleep system all gets compromised when you're in a state of stress, because the stress needs to be worked out right now. The main part about that is the stress that we think is perceived stress is not necessarily actual stress. So that's a big difference over there. Something we perceive to be stressful doesn't necessarily mean it is actually stressful for us. And the reason why that happens is we can feel very anxious about certain things. For right now, uncertainty of what the next couple of months are looking like, that can feel very stressful. However, that might not be an actual stress, in the sense that somebody's not going to come hurt you or attack you right now. And so we remind ourselves, let's ground ourselves, let's ground ourselves, let's ground ourselves. We're taking it day by day, hour by hour sometimes, and we're going to see how things go as the next few days roll out. We're not going to worry about what August is going to look like right now. And so we focus on things that are in our control right now. Upset stomach, that is something we often hear about, often feeling nauseous as well. Heart dropped into my stomach, I feel nauseous, I can't eat. Bowel movement issues, so digestive issues, GI issues, diarrhea or constipation, opposite ends of the spectrum. And then also a loss in like sexual desire and ability. And what this looks like as well for men is it could be like premature ejaculation. It could be erectile dysfunction. For women, it could be delayed period, early onset of menopause, difficulty getting pregnant, hair loss, skin concerns with our skin or acne. And this is how our body talks to us. And this is called somatic awareness. Soma means body in Greek. And so when you are more aware of your body, the more attuned you are to your body, the more healthier choices you are going to make in making sure that, you know what, my body, I'm feeling nauseous. Eat lasagna today. Bless you. Don't know who that is, but bless you. I'm not going to eat lasagna today because you know what? Dairy kind of triggers me in terms of like I'm feeling nauseous. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to just have some clear broths. So I'll have a chicken noodle soup, or I'll just have a very simple like vegetable soup just to help release any kind of tension that I have in my stomach because I don't feel so great. So the more aware you are of these somatic symptoms, we call them, in the body, the more likely you are going to be able to target them to make healthier decisions. So I said most of my tension comes up in my hips. There, for the last, I don't know how many months it's been, I do not go to sleep without doing a very simple 5-minute stretch for my hips. And it's just a pigeon's pose that I do on my yoga mat to make it very simple and accessible. I've actually just put my yoga mat right next to my bed, so I can't get into bed without stepping on my yoga mat. And that for me is a daily reminder, don't get into bed without doing those stretches for your hips, because I actually can't sleep the days I don't do it. Now, next up, fun fact, did you know that when the body, actually you do know because I mentioned it in the last slide, which I shouldn't have, but when we're having a stress response, when cortisol levels are going up, your body, other body systems, like I said, the digestive, the immune system, and the sleep system is less active. And so that's something I have written over here. And this is why you don't feel hungry in a situation when you're very stressed out, or the opposite, you feel extremely, well, we think we're hungry, but it's more so emotional eating. And the very simplest way to define physical hunger versus emotional hunger is physical hunger means I will eat anything. Give me something and I will eat it, no problem. Emotional hunger is I want this thing, I want it, extra cheese with pickles, and I want fries on the side. And also I want to order a sundae from this and this and this place. Now, that's the difference between physical and emotional hunger. With emotional hunger, you're very specific and particular, to the point sometimes when you say, sorry, you can't have that, the person says, you know what, I don't want to eat anything. It's fine. I don't want to eat anything. But if you're genuinely physically hungry, you'll say, give me that or give me anything. I'm starving right now. So fun fact. Okay, let's jump into stress management tips. I know I kind of already dabbled into it as well. There's many things that do come up, but for the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to talk about a few things. So one is emotion management. So when we're feeling overwhelmed, what are some things we can do to manage that, which kind of spills into self-care. Like all of these things are very great. They have a huge overlap with each other. Self-care practices will help us manage our emotions, setting our boundaries within ourselves. So what that means is after 8 o'clock, my phone automatically goes on silent mode. Even if I pick it up at 9:30, 10, that's fine, but it's just silent mode. So we're not getting constant notifications, and also practicing grounding techniques, which can fall under self-care, and also setting those boundaries, which, like I said, all of that is very blurred. Grounding techniques, like I just mentioned about what I do for myself, it looks like stretching out my hips while doing pigeon's pose before I get into bed. Okay, so I want to talk about a concept called habit stacking, which a lot of people have not heard about that term. However, many people do practice. Now, habit stacking is a strategy where you use to group together small changes into a routine that you already do. So what that looks like, for example, is, for instance, let's say most of us, when we wake up, we go to the bathroom, we wash our face, we use the bathroom, and then we brush our teeth after. Habit stack, and then many of us, we go grab our coffee, or we make some breakfast, or we just check our phones. Habit stacking is you kind of slip in something new into things that you already do. So for example, let's say I wake up and I go to the bathroom, I use the bathroom, I go pee, and then after that, I wash my face and I brush my teeth while I'm doing that. So after I brush my teeth, while I'm, after that, I go make a coffee. So between me brushing my teeth and making my coffee, I'm going to slip in a stretch in there. So while I'm brushing my teeth, maybe one of the things I can do is I can just put my foot up on the tub and stretch out my hips a little bit. And actually that is what I do because I don't have to set aside extra time to do those stretches. So I have an electric brush, and while it does this entire course in my mouth, I'm just like, okay, it's going around. I still put my foot up on the tub and I lean forward to stretch out my hips. A couple of stretches my physiotherapist has shown me, which has been very helpful, because when I wake up again, all that muscle tension that I have in my hips, I stretch it out and I alleviate it. And then, you know, I'll either hop into the shower or I'll go make my coffee, whichever one comes first for me. But what I do is, whether it's the shower or the coffee, it doesn't matter. The stretching of the hips goes simultaneously, or just while I'm brushing, it gets stacked on. So when it gets stacked on, you're more likely to do it, versus somebody saying to me, well, you know, you should make some time in the morning to like stretch your body before you do anything. No, we need more we need more specific, tangible goals that say, okay, so this time I do this, this time I do this, this time I do this, I can slip in 1, 2, and 3 right over there. And what that means is, instead of a series of tasks, it all feels like one task. It all feels like my morning routine, which is wake up, pee, brush, shower, stretch, coffee. Or it's just wake up, pee, wake up, pee, brush, coffee, stretch, and coffee. So 5 things is just my morning routine. It probably takes me about 30 minutes to do. So let's look at what an example or the formula is of habit stacking. Now, before a current habit, I will insert my new habit. So after brushing my teeth, I will stretch. Or before I make my coffee, I will stretch my hips and then make my coffee. And so that's just my morning example. Now, you can do this throughout the day, multiple times in a day. And this is very helpful when, you know, we often say like, oh, you know, I don't really have time. And many of us do say that, like, oh, I just didn't get time to do this, or I didn't get time to do that. Not a problem. Let's figure out what those pockets of time are. And what that means is you kind of have to sit down and you have to look at, and very much look with it through a magnifying glass, as to see where those pockets of time are that we haven't really identified and recognized. So for instance, as I make my morning coffee or tea, I'll just practice deep breathing for a minute. So as the coffee beans are grinding, or the milk is steaming, or the milk is heating up on the stovetop, I'm standing there and I'm just doing belly breathing. And that looks like 4-second inhale, 8-second exhale, 1 hand on my chest, 1 hand on my belly. You don't have to do it that way. It could just be as simple as, and with fresh coffee beans in the morning, it's phenomenal. When I take my lunch break, I will stretch my body just as I heat up my food. So heating up the food, or just pulling out the food, you know, putting it together in my plate, popping it into the microwave or the oven, I'll stand there and I'll just do some stretches again for my hips, because we sit so much. My hips have been, and my knees have been, a little bit more targeted. For you, if it's your upper body or your chest, I would highly recommend as well doing that for yourself. Getting up and stretching every so often. You can set some alarms on your phone that kind of just buzz to give you those reminders. After finishing my dinner, we often talk about, you know, what are things I'm grateful for, the gratitude journal. And then people say like, yeah, I bought this journal. It's been amazing. I did it for like 2 weeks and then I kind of let it go. One of the things you can get into the practice of is, you know, after you finish your dinner and you're kind of just sitting there, maybe you're watching the TV or hanging out with your family, one of the things you could do is either go around sharing that, or just in your own mind, you say like, you know what, I'm just reflecting on the day and what is the thing I'm grateful for today. Or as you get into bed, you think about that as well, or you write it down. Something that's easy is right under your pillow. Just keep a book and a pen already that's attached to it, or right next to your pillow. So it's very easy access. You can pull it out. Many people do it on the phone. I personally don't recommend the phone, only because as soon as we pick up our phone, we see all of our notifications and then we get sidetracked and then we forget. So these are just some examples of what habit stacking looks like for all of us. And I would encourage for all of you to take a moment to reflect and think about, okay, where can, you know, what is something that I've been wanting to do and where can I stack that in? And you'll notice that there's a couple of things you can stack in and you're like, oh, I didn't even realize that. It's pretty neat. Now that I know I can do that, you'll make more of an active effort and you're more likely to be successful at it, because with the brushing goes the stretching, or with the lunch break goes the stretching, or with this goes the gratitude journal or the gratitude reflections. Okay, next up is another poll question for everybody. How do you define self-care, and what does that look like for you?
I'm absolutely going to start stretching when I brush my teeth. It seems like such an obvious tip, because I find it so boring to brush my teeth. So I'm always trying to multitask, but you actually need your hands.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Easy. And like you're holding your brush, foot on the tub, and that's it. Lean forward and you'll notice a nice glute, hamstring, and also hip flexor stretch.
Yeah. Also, Sarah, I did not ever know that there was a difference between emotional and physical eating. And now that I do, I honestly don't know that I've been physically hungry for a day of my life.
Yeah. Well, And then break it down a little bit more and you'll be like, oh, it's probably because I'm like stressed so much and not real.
Yes, like what's been going on in my life that I'm always specifically hungry.
And you know, that was actually me in the pandemic. And I remember, this was never me or what I did, but I remember going to like multiple grocery stores because I was like, no, I need the white Oreo thins, not the regular ones, just the white ones. I need that specific one. I remember going to like No Frills, Loblaws, Shoppers, Metro. And I was like, what? This is not me. What is going on here? And last summer I was like, hey, no more. July, it stopped. I stopped bringing it in.
Yeah, it really hit home when you said, it really hit home when you said that you want a specific kind of burger with cheese, and then if you can't have it, then you're not hungry. It's like that is every meal for me.
Exactly. So then the question is like, wait, am I even hungry then if I can't have that?
Yeah. Okay.
Alrighty.
We can probably come to a close. Oh,
yes.
Oh, we just had a bunch of people all of a sudden. Okay.
Okay, awesome.
I'm gonna close it now, everyone.
Alrighty. Oh, we've got a tie there. Wonderful. So you know what is so interesting? What's most interesting is this is actually one of the first workshops. No, it is the first workshop that I've done for a much smaller space. Usually the workshops I do are in the city, organizations, corporations, and a lot of the answers vary on that. So majority of the time, it's not moving my body or being kind to myself. Self-care usually is, the first answer that goes is like nails, hair, spa, vacation. But I'm assuming that like changes from demographic to demographic because the city population is much younger, I'm assuming. It could be one of the reasons. But okay, yes. So being kind to myself and moving my body daily. So self-compassion and physical movement. There's something that there's a gym I used to go to, you know, in those good old days when we could go to the gym. And one of the trainers there would always say it, and it just stuck with me, which is movement is medicine. And the days where I would just feel so uneasy and just you know, defeated from life because the pandemic is just taken over everything for that day. I used to constantly tell myself, movement is medicine, get up and move. And that would just mean I would take the elevator. I live on floor number 7. I take the elevator down to floor number, 3. And then I would just walk down 2 flights of stairs and that would be enough for me. And then I take the elevator and come back up. And even something as that it is significantly change how you feel because it just gets like the feel good hormones, which is serotonin and dopamine pumping. Now, this is nice to see actually, because a lot of times the answers, so we've got physical movement, we've got self-compassion, and then next up is eating cleaner, which is wonderful. And I love seeing these because these are things we can do on every single day. The reason why I love seeing these is because there's a huge misconception that people think self-care takes a lot of time. Who has the time to do it? I don't have the time to do it, so I can't really do it. The 3 things that everybody or majority of people picked over here are things that we can do every single day. So let's talk about what that looks like. Daily self-care looks, whoops, let me close that. No. Spoiler alert. So daily self-care looks like meals, being mindful of our meal choices. So trying to eat whole foods versus processed meals. So for instance, one of the things I've done is, like I mentioned, the Oreo cookies that I just was going everywhere looking for. I stopped purchasing any box. So now if I want them, I actually look specifically for a small packet, or I look to buy just specifically one white chocolate macadamia nut cookie from Subway. That's it. Other than that, nothing's coming in. I'll even get 2 cookies or 3 cookies if I need to, but nothing comes into the household because I'm trying to just cut down on that. I know what's going to happen when the full box comes in. That's one thing. Second thing also is replacing the most simple things in the day. So for example, just replacing white sugars with honey, or replacing regular pasta with like bean pasta, edamame pasta, replacing white rice with brown rice, just small changes that are there, and also changing the portion. So for example, I know when I go to my mom's house, it's like a full Indian spread, and I've grown up eating that food, and I know that I know I'm not going to say no to it. And my mom's not making biryani with brown rice. She would be like, I don't know what you're talking about. So she would do it regularly. However, what I would do is I would reduce the portions and I would start moving around with the portion size. So previously I would have a massive portion of the biryani and everything else she's cooked. Now I actually shrink the portion of the biryani. So I do eat it, but I fill myself up with other things as well that are on the side. So that could look like some chicken she's made or some like vegetables she's made. So I'll load up more so on that and I'll just shrink the portions. And that again is daily self-care. Environment, something that I don't know if any of you can see, but I always have this baby in the back running. My diffuser, it is very, very helpful. I actually also travel with it. The reason why is because it's extremely grounding and also just makes my environment feel very comfortable when I'm moving around. Back in the good old days when we could travel or move around to different places. So I've got the diffuser. I find it to be very helpful. I know that there's also small size as well. Sage has a small pocket size or a car size actually, and you can just plug it into the car, and again it's very, very soothing and relaxing. The reason why is because essential oils actually operate in our brain. I won't go into details, but we have a smell center. It's called the olfactory system in our brains, and certain smells get registered in there. And that's why when you can be walking and McDonald's will be a mile away, but you can smell it and you're like, I could smell a McDonald's close by, or Subway, because their smell of their dough and their breads is so prominent and it's a global chain. You could spot a Subway from not too far away just because the smells get registered in the olfactory system. So that's another thing that self-care looks like. Plant care. As you can see, this has been my pandemic project, slowly adding small, and it's just, I don't know when I'll stop, but I'm like, oh, just one here, one here, one here. And it is something that's very relaxing and very soothing as well to take care of these plants. And I'm sure many of you can relate to the joy that comes from within when you see one tiny new leaf coming up, especially in the months of winter, the cold months. It is something that is very, very grounding for a lot of us as well. And it's the main reason why when we go out into the forest or nature, we feel very grounded. It's because we actually, as humans, we relate to things that are just nature-based. So whether it's water, whether it's oceans, whether it's mountains, whether it's the forest, because think about it, when we were created as a species, that was there, we were there, and that was familiar to us. And when that was familiar to us, we have a natural gravitation towards that. Dancing. Dancing is, I find personally, the most underrated thing ever. We all know to do it. We all forget to do it. And you know what? The best thing about it is you don't need to go anywhere. All you have to do is just get up off your chair, same spot. You could just bounce around in the same spot. You don't need a lot of space. And what it does is as you start moving, your heart starts pumping. And when that happens, your serotonin and dopamine, the feel-good hormones that we have naturally existing, they start pumping up. When they start pumping up, you naturally feel good. You feel more in control. You feel more grounded versus like floating away in our thoughts. I'm going to do a quick time check because I feel like I've been talking for a good chunk of time. There we go. All right. Next up, looks like we're good for time. Now, daily self-care can also look like, it's not just about adding things like, more veggies, more this, more that. No, it's also sometimes removing things as well. And so removing things look like if you're having a rough day or having a tough day, for instance, on days like today, something that's happened to me over the last 2 years is I started to develop pressure headaches. So on days like today, when I wake up, I know I need to do a couple more extra things in the morning with peppermint oil and eucalyptus to just open up my sinuses because I feel very heavy and clogged up over here. And so, yeah, I know I can't call in sick just to work just because I've got a massive pressure headache. But what I can do is I can do other things to just make that day easy, which goes into point number 2, removing certain tasks for the day. So today I'm probably not going to cook. I'm probably going to do some takeout just because my head's been a little bit clogged up this morning. I'm okay now. However, I know that because it was a little bit of more of a cloggy day for me in the morning, I couldn't get to all the tasks I had to. So rather than just like stressing myself out and putting myself through more things, I just say, hey, you know what? I'm going to not worry about it. I'm just dealing with this today, and that's all we're going to do. feeling guilty. Guilt is a big one that comes up for a majority of us. We feel guilty and then we want to do something, but we're so tired. So it's like, oh no, they have it worse. At least I have a job. I should be more grateful, but I'm so tired. No, I can't even get out of bed. They don't even have so I think a lot of times those conversations come up within the pandemic. The most common one that people report is like, it's just, I'm struggling so much, but I should just be grateful that I have this and this and this, and people don't have that. I should be grateful to have access to the vaccine. Many people can't even get access to hospital care. And so these things come up, and what happens is it's okay to feel guilty. It's a very normal human emotion. However, when you feel guilty, acting upon that guilt is part two. So that is a two-step process. So feeling the emotion is one thing. Acting upon the emotion is a totally different thing. So we can feel guilty and we can let that guilt stay. And something I would encourage for you all to reflect on is, where does that guilt show up in the body? Many people say it's like, over here, I just feel so uneasy. And I don't know, actually, this crowd might be like, I can't sleep. I don't know. But most people say it shows up in the chest, and it's just kind of like crouching a little bit. And what we can do when we're experiencing that is, again, breathe in. I did a very quick version of that, but take some time to do that, maybe 3 to 5 minutes. And you'll notice that the tightness in the chest that comes because we feel guilty, that somatic symptom that we experience from guilt in the body, it actually gets reduced. So intensity gets reduced because the chest opens up a bit more when we're breathing in. The other thing that happens to us when we feel guilty or we feel anxious, we start to breathe from the chest, which is very short and rapid breaths, and it's fast, fast, fast. So what happens when you start to breathe from the chest and not from the stomach, you're taking in very small breaths, and the small breaths push oxygen to the brain. So that means that you're only pushing in very small amount of oxygen to the brain. Oxygen, as we all know, is food for the brain and the rest of our body and our organs, and it needs food to perform. So no surprise over here. Oh, sorry, I just see something on the screen, but no surprise over here. But anytime you give less food to anybody, whether it's a child who's hungry, whether it's yourself, your partner, we all start to panic. It's like, oh my God, I don't have enough food. I don't have enough food. And so the brain and the body do the same. So our anxiety and stress level and the guilt actually starts to kind of exacerbate and get worse because we breathe from the chest and not from the stomach. So we have to make a conscious effort to switch from the chest down to the stomach. And what that looks like is very simple. 4-second inhale through the nose, 8-second exhale through the mouth. And like I said, this is a skill that you're actively trying to develop. So take some time, go easy on yourself, and practice it every day. Set an alarm on your phone that goes off 3 to 5 times a day just to remind yourself, hey, breathe from the stomach. Even if things are okay, breathe from the stomach. Why is that? Because you're trying to develop a skill. And when things kind of get rocky or a little bit stressful or sticky, guess what? That skill you've developed is going to kick in then. And you'll notice that I feel much better. Alrighty, so next up, let's see what that looks like. Another did you know? Okay, so this one is another fun fact, which is majority of people associate stressors when it comes to big things. So like, for example, the pandemic, or like an accident, or the loss of a loved one, or loss of a job, like big, big, big things. But in reality, research shows that the toll our bodies take from stress are actually the small things that happen from day to day to day. And it's not the big things. Yes, the big things are a big blow, but the things that chip away at us every single day are the things that actually harm us the most. And that leads to other medical health conditions. And of course, that's anxiety, depression, diabetes, and hypertension and gout, and so many other things that are connected directly to stress, which I'm sure many of you are aware of as well. All right, next up, last poll, I promise.
So this one's speaking to the business owners, because this is a mental health for business owner session, yeah. And I know anyone who's been in charge of a team this year has had to probably think about, what does leadership look like in a crisis? And Sarah, you're the co-founder of Wellness, so you have a team as well, don't you?
Yes, yes. Yeah. We have a team of, I want to say we're at 24. So yeah, my small baby has gotten big.
Interesting. I actually read an article in I think it was Global News a while back that showed they'd done a survey and that a lot of people were leaving their jobs this year because of how their manager handled the pandemic. Yeah, did you see that too?
Yeah, I did. And unfortunately, it is something I have continued to see, and I hear often from my clients as well, the way they have to kind of navigate work dynamics, working from home. It's been very, very challenging. I've also seen that as well with the whole BLM movement last summer about how the workplace navigated that and what that looked like. And people leaving their jobs because they're like, we don't align with the values of this organization, and that's very important for us. And there was a lot of people leaving their jobs then too.
Okay, I think we've gotten to the end. Oh, I just want to give people a few more seconds because these answers were longer.
Brittany, do you see anything on your screen? Is there like
there's like a little green squiggly, but it's not, I mean, obscuring anything. I think maybe what happened is, I know that sometimes you can draw on the screen if you're, and so maybe it just allowed you to draw on the screen.
Yeah, I might have done that. Keeping them spicy, that's just what I'm doing. That's it.
Okay, so I'm going to close the poll.
Okay, awesome. All righty, so transparent with the team about their concerns, supports the mental and physical health needs of the team, gives frequent updates and communications. What do you need me for? This is a winning team over here. I'm not needed. Look at these answers, they're perfect. And it's true, those are actually the most important things. Everything's been selected over here or voted highest in the poll are the most important things. So thank you everybody for sharing that. I wish you were all my bosses over the last 10 years of the jobs I've worked and unfortunately left. So it's very nice to see that these are the thoughts that are in business owners' minds and that these are things that are important for them. Okay, so one of the things that comes up, whoops, let me just close this. Okay. Oh no, there we go. Okay. So one of the things that comes up most often is we talk about resiliency in the staff, in ourselves. And this one's a little bit text heavy, so bear with me. And this is also a good chunk of it, I'm sure it's not news to you, but just as a gentle refresher, greater levels of resiliency are correlated naturally with lower levels of anxiety, stress, and depression. And what that looks like is reminding yourself that, hey, just because something went down today that was awful doesn't mean it's the end of the world. Today's a rough day. We're going to call it a day. Probably going to order some pizza, watch some TV, watch something funny, and call it a day. And then tomorrow we'll figure it out. Resiliency is also positively associated with greater life satisfaction, overall well-being. And what it does is reminding yourselves constantly of being resilient helps you understand that even though the situation right now is very difficult, like I said, today's the day we're going to order pizza and just watch some TV, it doesn't mean that this is it. Like something went down today, it was totally unexpected, it was just total mess. It's not the end of it. Right? And so reminding ourselves that it is difficult right now and we trust ourselves to figure it out tomorrow. What does the answer look like? I don't know. But what I do know is I'll go sit down and look at all my options and take it from there. What this also does, this same approach, it helps you learn better because you're, rather than shutting down and shutting anything to come in, being like, oh my God, this is over, this is over, this is over, we're reminding ourselves like, hey, take a minute, sit down, reflect, and let's look at certain options. Because remember when I said when you're distressed, this part of your brain shrinks and also the amygdala starts to increase. So then we start to pick up on other things that are just stressful in the environment. And what happens also at that point, we start our memory starts getting impacted, our learning starts to get impacted. So we remind ourselves about resiliency and remind ourselves of situations when we've been resilient as well, it helps us perform better, think better. Memory actually starts to get a little bit better as well, not as foggy. And we are able to retain information and tap into resources better, because what you're able to do is you're going to tap into all parts of your brain when you're in a state of much more calm and resilient, rather than a state of distress, which is like the fight, flight, freeze just gets activated. Obviously, this also means that when you start to make when you're in a better headspace, you're going to start to make healthier decisions. Also, resiliency has been very directly linked to, or physical movement, which again, you all picked and selected. Movement is very directly linked to resiliency. And one of the things we see in the gyms back in the good old days when we would go also is that, we would go to the gym, and yes, anybody who's starting out does not start off with like the 25-pound dumbbells. Start off with as small as 3 pounds, 2 pounds, 5 pounds, and then you work your way up. And that is, again, resiliency. It takes time. And I think many of us are quite eager to just rush into things because we live in the world of instant everything. And so it takes a minute for us to remind ourselves that no, some things, majority of the things in this world are not meant to be instant. They're meant to be done at a slower pace. And they have been done by our ancestors and our parents and our grandparents, and just for the forever actually. And it's just in North America, we're a little bit faster and we have a slightly different, more approach to things. And so what we're doing is we're unlearning it and we're relearning healthier ways. Again, it's a skill. It takes time like any other skill. So just be gentle with yourself as that is also happening. Now, how do we build it? 6 ways to build it. 1, develop a very supportive social circle. I know one of the things where it gets very challenging now is when we have that supportive circle, we can't really meet up with them. It is a little bit limiting. However, do your best as much as you can, whether it is drive by, dropping off, something that you might have baked, if it's safe to do so, of course, or doing those Zoom calls or those video calls. I know, one more time, anybody hears Zoom, that's it. Eyes and ears all gonna pop off. So maybe a phone call might be better at that time, or just maybe doing a Netflix party as well at that time. Accepting that the only thing consistent in the world is change. And I remember somebody had said this to me years and years and years ago, and they said the only thing consistent in the world, or the only thing constant in this world is change. And that will always continue to happen. So just keep expecting it, rather than reminding yourself, this is how it started and this is just how it's going to be and nothing else is going to change. That's where we're going to find ourselves into trouble. Being open to shifting your perspective. So, okay, we've got in, new computers. We're going to have to figure out how to do this. Before we would do things on paper and book, and now we're all adapting to using a computer. It might take us a little bit of time. Again, using a computer or a new system, it's a new skill we're learning, and any skill takes some time. Self-compassion is going to be the key ingredient that helps you build that resilience. If you beat yourself up and you're like, oh, I can't get anything straight, every single thing I do messes up, or my luck is just so awful, what you're doing is you're just shutting it down and you're not allowing room for growth or to develop resilience, because you're not being self-compassionate. So that self-compassionate piece is going to help you very much foster resiliency in almost everything you do. Facing your fears. Big one. I know as a business owner, I was like, oh my gosh, can I even make rent? What is going on? When I first started or opened up the clinic with my partner, Zainab, it was very, very stressful. And we're like, well, we don't know if we're going to make rent, but let's see. You know what? Worst case scenario, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, shave off this, and I'll just be able to make rent and I'll figure out the rest. Same with her. And one of the things that we realize is we can sit there and we can think about like, what if this, what if this, what if this, what if this? Could, should, would always gets you spinning in circles. Sometimes we actually have to go ahead and do it. And we can also remind ourselves that I am so scared right now. And through this fear, I can still progress. So through the fear of having to do a virtual presentation, I can still progress. And I did, because like I said, last year, this time around, I was terrified. And it's very uncomfortable just staring into, like right now, I can't see anybody. And I'm probably looking quite funny to anybody looking at me from outside, because I'm just staring at a green light that's lit up on top of my screen and I don't see anything else or anybody. Here I am making jokes and laughing at myself, actually. So that takes time to get used to. It doesn't come so natural. It's not easy to develop either. So like I said, last year, I was very uncomfortable and fearful of this virtual void that I just would have to fill up with my nervous, uncomfortable laughter. Now I've gotten significantly more comfortable with it. And the reason why is because I reminded myself I'm scared. And through my fear, I can still work through it and progress. There's space for both, and both can move together in the direction I'm hoping for. Avoid taking the easy route. And this is something that many of us do, which is like, do this, that's easier, or, just grab some McDonald's, it's easier. What that does is, even though it's easier at that moment in time, it limits your growth. And that's something that we don't want to do, because if you're looking for, think about it, are you looking for the long-term play or the short-term play? Many times what happens is, for short-term gain, it ends up hurting us, and that becomes long-term pain. So many things that are actually a little bit more challenging in the beginning are actually better for us in the long run. So that's short-term pain for long-term gain. And that's also something that I do personally as a business owner and as a mental health therapist, is to remind clients, like, okay, is this something that you want to do right now? Wonderful. Do you think, what does this decision look like for you in the next 2 months or 3 weeks or 6 months from now? Is it long-term pain or long-term gain? What is it that it does? And go ahead and make that decision based on that response that you're having. Like I said, the last one, self-compassion. I cannot emphasize this enough. This is your key ingredient. If you're not going to listen to anything in this presentation, that's the only thing I recommend for you to listen to, is self-compassion is your key ingredient in being able to progress with anything, to proceed, like to be resilient, to be stronger, to be much more open to learning and access better centers in your brain for memory and growth. You need that self-compassion. And also to be able to learn, of course, any life skills. You have to remind yourself to be compassionate to yourself, because it'll take time to learn any life skills. And the one thing in life is, I've learned, and I'm sure many of you know, is we constantly need to keep changing and fine-tuning our life skills. And that always comes with self-compassion. One last thing, one rule to follow as a leader, and it was, and this is something that I saw. It was actually one of the 2 answers that were selected. This is the one, which is share your concerns, be open about transparency, sharing your vulnerabilities with your team. It helps promote and normalize conversations that just us human beings, we struggle. And when we are business owners, we wear multiple hats. And so to inform employees about that, to inform your team about that, and also to open it up for feedback, only builds strength within the team, within the community, builds the culture of care, openness to them, and also, of course, builds a very resilient team. And that being said, that's it. That brings me to the end of my presentation. We're almost, I think we're kind of good for time, but I think we're just right on the cusp of it.
Great.
Great for time. And just before we jump into Q&A, I think Carissa has something as well.
Okay.
Yep.
Can we maybe unpin your presentation just for a minute, Sarah, and then you can pull it back up again after. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Sarah. I can't wait to dive more into some of that content. But first, I owe Claire an apology because when we started, I was so excited to hear about some of the initiatives that she's working on that I forgot to give her a platform to introduce said initiatives. So Claire, if I can pass it over to you to kind of introduce those few things. And then I think when we move into that Q&A, then attendees can address either Claire with some of the initiatives that she's working on, or Sarah with some of your knowledge bombs that you just dropped on us during this session as well. So over to you, Claire.
I mean, if I may, Claire, is it all right if I give you a quick introduction?
Absolutely. Thanks,
yeah,
Brittany.
I think it's just great to lend some context. So if you don't already know Claire, she lives and works in Dufferin County, and she's a licensed realtor with her husband, David Crow, at Go With Crow, which services the Dufferin and Wellington area. And she's also a registered holistic nutritionist and holds an honors Bachelor of Science degree in human physiology and kinesiology. So well versed on the physical side of the mental health spectrum. And then, when we say community champion, it's because Claire's the co-founder of the initiative Share Your Silver Lining, which started in January. and it aims to raise positivity, awareness, and funds for the Mental Health Association. And she also sits on the Suicide Awareness Council of Wellington Dufferin, and is organizing Music in the Hills Mower for June 25th, which is a nonprofit drive-in concert to raise funds and awareness for suicide awareness and prevention. And 100% of those proceeds go directly back to Dufferin County.
Thank you very much, Brittany. Thanks for the intro. And thank you so much, Sarah, for that presentation. And, you know, I think as business owners and as a realtor, but I've also owned a retail store in the past, and whatever we're involved in as far as business, whether it's restaurants or retail or whatever, real estate, I think we have to check in with ourselves. And interestingly enough, I work more on the physical side, but I connect the physical health and the mental health with the importance of business. And actually last week I did a presentation to all the real estate agents in the Kitchener Real Estate Board called Realtor Resilience and Self-Care. So Sarah, it was really interesting, especially as you ended your presentation, on the importance of self-compassion, self-care, and resiliency, because that is just so important, especially right now. And we have to remind ourselves that we are right in the middle of a pandemic, and we have to give ourselves some slack, and we have to give ourselves permission to have tough days, and permission to look after ourselves. And I always say, if you're not looking after yourself, it's very hard to be the best person that you can be and to be your best self. And that comes to being the best business owner, the best boss, the best leader, the best parent, the best partner. And, you know, looking after your physical body and your physical health is just as important as looking after your mental health, because they're so connected. So thank you so much, Sarah. That was incredible. And I'd love to chat with you more. I'd like to tell everybody just quickly about the 2 initiatives that we have going on in Dufferin County, which is super exciting. And then I'm going to open the floor for any questions for Sarah or myself. And we'll look at that with, if you want to raise your hand on your screen under the chat box, or if you want to type it into the chat box, we'll open it that way. So either or. So first and foremost, about a year ago, I was supposed to be hiking the Camino de Santiago trail for 6 weeks. I'd taken the time off my business and work, and I was going to hike for 6 weeks, 800 kilometers to raise money for the Canadian Mental Health Association. And it took a while to figure out that I wasn't actually going to be going on this hike about 2 weeks before, when the pandemic hit. So as time went on over 2020, myself and my colleague, Jennifer Price, who's a mortgage broker, we were getting outside, walking together 6 feet apart, trying to get some exercise, looking after our mental health. And we were talking about how we could raise some, inspire people to look at the positives, because really, it's not just all negative things that have been happening this past year. There's been some beautiful silver linings and positive things that have come out of the last 12 to 18 months. So we started an initiative called Share Your Silver Lining, and it does 3 things. So first of all, it's on Facebook, Instagram, and there's a website, shareyoursilverlining.ca. And it's to do 3 things. Number 1, it's to support local businesses, because that is really important right now, is driving people into the smaller businesses, and most importantly, the local businesses. So every week since January, we've had a local business that's been featured on the Facebook, Instagram, and the website. And that business has donated some kind of prize to give away. And so that's the first component. The second component is to focus on positive stories. So we allow, it's a community page, and we encourage and inspire people to go on and to share with a private message or on a community post stories of things that have happened to them. And we've had some incredible stories that are just heartwarming, that we never would have expected, of people sharing pictures and just written stories and even videos of wonderful things that's happened in their home, in their life, and in their community. And then third of all, we're raising funds for community mental health in our local community. So everybody has to do is go on this Facebook page, share their story, and every week we do a draw for a prize from a local business. So this week it's Flaunt Salon and Spa in Orangeville, and they're giving away a gift basket. And at the very end of the initiative, which actually this initiative ends on Mother's Day, Everybody that has shared their story or who has donated, even though they've already been in the weekly draw, they go in the draw to win a wonderful donation of an overnight stay, breakfast, and $200 gift card from Hockley Valley Resort locally. So if you haven't already seen the Share Your Silver Lining page, please go on, tag Share Your Silver Lining hashtag after you've shared your story. And you still have an opportunity. The draw is tomorrow for the basket from Flaunt Salon and Spa. And then you still also get a chance to go into the draw for the Mother's Day draw. And we're going to continue this initiative on. It's been such a huge success. There's been lots of media coverage. And it's been nice for Jen and I to do something for the community with the time that we have that we can do from home. And it's been great for the local businesses to get the exposure, to do something to give back to the community, and for us all to come together to really support Canadian Mental Health Association and encourage people to look at the positives. So if you don't know about the initiative, please jump on social media or on the website to check it out. The other thing we have going on is Music in the Hills, which is going to happen on Friday, June 25th at Mansfield Ski Club. And it's a drive-in concert, and it's COVID friendly. And there's only so many tickets. Hopefully we're going to launch the tickets this weekend. And the headliner is Jim Cuddy from Blue Rodeo. And we also have Sohaila Smith, who is a local Canadian young up-and-coming artist from Shelburne. And there's a few other artists that just will touch your heart. It's all local artists. We're actually supported by the CRTC and the local radio station. And all the funds that are raised over and above the production costs, 100% will go to the Suicide Awareness Council of Dufferin County, specifically Dufferin. So there's some really great initiatives that the Suicide Awareness Council has planned for suicide awareness and prevention in the schools in our community. And there's a lot of support that's needed on that side of things. And we don't get a lot of funding. It's actually the Canadian Mental Health Association that has a paid employee that runs the Suicide Awareness Council. And then it's all volunteers like myself that sit on the board. So it's a really important initiative for the community. And I hope you can go on it's called Music in the Hills. And there is a Facebook page and Instagram page, and the website will be released this week as well. So yeah, we're really excited to do these things in our community. The Museum of Dufferin is supporting it, and everybody that drives in gets a swag bag with all sorts of goodies that are donated by local businesses. So if you own a local business and you want to be part of this, there isn't a cost component involved. You can have your information in these swag bags for local community members who participate in the drive-in concert. So lots of opportunities to support local initiatives, and we hope you'll be involved. So once again, thank you, Sarah, and we're going to open up the floor to anybody who has any questions about anything to do with what Sarah's spoken about or what I have spoken about. If you'd like to either raise your hand, I'll keep my eye on all the hands, or you're welcome to type in the chat box as well. Any questions at all for Sarah or myself? Yeah, here we go. Yeah. I've got a question here from Sarah. Beyond the general tips about communication, empathy, etc., from a leadership perspective, do you have any recommendations for specific tangible things that leaders can do to support their teams? Great question. So what can leaders do to support their teams during this time?
Did we lose Sarah?
I think we lost Sarah.
Did we lose Sarah? I'm just looking for here on the gallery.
She'll come back.
She'll come back.
She did warn us that she always has a technical difficulty.
That's an excellent question. So I can't wait to hear the answer for that. While we're waiting for Sarah to come back, are there any questions at all for me about any of the initiatives we have going on in Dufferin County?
I just want to say thank you that the concert sounds incredible, and it's such a gift to the community that you're donating it back to the suicide awareness. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, I think all of us need something exciting, and even if we're dancing in our cars, we're dancing, right? So, yeah,